Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 775 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, we're going to be speaking with Rita. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 57. She's 63 now, and she got her type 1 diabetes in a rather unique way. It was brought on by a therapy she was taking for her cancer. Her story is rather unique and incredibly interesting. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're enjoying the Juicebox Podcast, please share it with someone else who you think might also enjoy it. It's the best thing you could do for the show. Share it. Help people listen. Help them find it in Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever they get audio. If you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 or is the caregiver of a type 1, please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. When you complete the survey, you're helping yourself, people living with type 1 diabetes, and the Juicebox Podcast. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. The podcast is also sponsored by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. It is a great meter that is easy to carry, easy to use, and just lovely to be around. Have you ever had a device like that where you're just like, I like holding this thing? It works. That's how I feel about the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. It works, and I don't mind holding it. There you go. It's high praise for a blood glucose meter. Damn thing's accurate and easy to use. What else do you want? ContourNext.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com.
An early riser or just don't get to work early?
I don't usually work that early. Like, no, it's not crazy. Don't get me wrong. But last night, I sent Arden a text at school at like 7:30, and I was like, hey, really stay on top of your blood sugar because I want to go to bed on time. And, you know, like I'm working, I'm working early tomorrow and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, yeah. And then I don't know what, I don't know what she ate at 10 o'clock. You know what I mean? And I was like, so then I'm texting her. I'm like, hey, you have to bolus. And she's just not answering. I'm like, oh, no. And so I look and I realized that I think she's asleep, and her blood sugar is kind of going 160, 170, and I'm like, oh gosh. So Arden uses Loop, so I'm remotely like jacking up her basal and setting lower targets and all the things that I can impact from Night Scout, right?
From afar.
Yeah, and I'm watching and I'm texting like, please just wake up. I just needed her to bolus like a half. You know, like please just bolus, like please. So
what time does that all end at?
Oh, I go to bed at 2:30, and then goodness. So I'm like, that's okay. I'm going to get up at 7:30. I'll let the dogs out and take a shower. Blah blah blah. And at 5 of 7, I get a text, and it just wakes me right up, and it's nonsensical from my mom. I'm like, Mom, what are you saying? And she goes, never mind. This was a mistake. Go back to bed. Now I'm awake.
Yeah, now you're not going to go back to sleep.
So I slept 4.5 hours.
Oh, well.
And then I went downstairs and I was like, oh, the dogs look rested. That's nice. And I took them out and,
Yeah, you could nap after the call.
Well,
maybe.
It's possible.
There you go.
Well, my son was like, I need to get tires on my car. And I'm like, uh-huh. He's like, I don't really know how to do that. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, gosh.
He's like,
I know.
Do you want to do that today? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I'll do that today.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sure I'll be fine. Or one day it'll just kill me. This is the day. Who knows?
Yeah. A parent job never ends, does it? It's like.
Apparently not.
Apparently not.
It's funny, too.
Right.
Arden's biggest problem at school, of all the things that we were. I'm sorry, Rita, we're recording just in case this ends up making a podcast. Of all the things that I was ready for, The one thing I didn't consider is that the quality of the food at the college would not be as maybe pure as it is at home. So that's where we're having problems.
Yeah.
It's interesting of all the things.
It's like, I guess, eating out all the time, right? I mean, I think she's not having a home cooked meal, and it's like she's eating out all the time.
Yeah, she's in their cafeteria and picking and and it's buffet style, etc. So anyway, is it going to be hotter? Is she going to have more activity? Will there be stress? All the things I thought I was ready for. And the one thing I didn't think about was, what if the food
cafeteria food?
Yeah, what if the food is just crappy? You know what I mean? So anyway, do you have any questions or concerns before we get going?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm ready to go. Sound is good for you?
Oh, sounds perfect.
Wonderful.
Absolutely fine.
That's great.
So normally I would ask you to introduce yourself, but this is Rita. There you go.
This is I. Yeah. Yes, this is Rita.
How old are you?
I am 63 years old, and I was diagnosed with type 1 at the age of 57. I live in Georgia, and I am a cancer patient, which led to the type 1 diagnosis. My treatment did. So I've got a story to tell, and it's quite rare. But I know there's a few of us out there that have gotten type 1 as a result of immunotherapy.
Yeah.
So that's the gist of my story.
That's something. Well, let's pick through it then. So, do you have children?
I have 2 children. They are 33 and 32. They are adopted. So my husband and I adopted them when they were just under 3 years old and just under 1 year old. They are siblings by birth. And so I adopted them. I traveled to Romania, and back, after the fall of the Ceausescu government. And I traveled there by myself and found these 2 wonderful kids, and they've been with me, or with my husband and I, ever since. Our son is married. I have 2 grandkids, and our daughter is on her own, and they're doing lovely. They're great.
Were they siblings in Romania, or were they 2?
They were.
They were.
No, they're actually brother and sister, like biological brother and sister. So great for them to have each other. And so that's our family. My husband and I, we were never able to get pregnant. But in the grand scheme, I think it didn't matter because I got these 2 wonderful kids.
Wow, that's great. You knew how to do the sex and everything. It just didn't work out.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You knew where everything.
It just didn't work out.
Yeah, you knew
I did everything by the book.
Oh, okay. That's what I was wondering. It's funny as you're introducing yourself and you tell me you're 63. I interviewed a woman yesterday who was 62, and I asked if she had children, and she said 4, I think. And the last one, she said, well, is my foster child. And I said, oh, how did that happen? And she tells a story about her daughter's friend whose family just fell apart, and her daughter came home one day and was like, we have to take her in. And that was like when they were, I don't know, 15 or 16, and now they're in their mid-30s. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. It's interesting to hear too.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful, and it just shows how much a person you can love. Like, you just can just love. It doesn't have to be, I find, it doesn't have to be from me. It's just they're just 2 great kids, and my grandchildren. I am so grateful. So my first grandson was born in August of 2015, and I was diagnosed with cancer in December of 2016. Mm-hmm. And so the diagnosis was really, first of all, extremely unexpected. It is, so I don't know if I told you, I have been diagnosed with mucosal melanoma in the vagina. So basically, it is a type of melanoma that grows in the mucus areas of the body. So vaginal, rectal, nasal. Mm-hmm. You can get it in the eye. And anyway, those are the primary. So if all melanomas, 95% are cutaneous, 5% are mucosal. And of that 5, I'm going to guess less than 2% are vaginal. So this diagnosis, a lot of things sort of, when you hear my story, a lot of things sort of, I'm lucky. And somebody is looking out for me, whether that be my higher power or I don't know. It's just the way things have worked out. I've been very fortunate. I mean, really, I shouldn't be here. The diagnosis, I was never told how long I had, but because I didn't ask, I didn't want to know. I had to focus on the positive, but it was not, I don't know. I didn't get the impression from the doctors that this was very hopeful. So
it wasn't very laissez-faire in the room. They're like, "No, we'll just work right through this. It'll be fine." It's all, well, I mean, in an orifice of any kind, I just have to think like that's craziness because, and I'm going to want to hear. Okay, so hold on, I'm going to go backwards just for 2 seconds to tell you something about loving people and adoption. Just very quick, I'm adopted, as you probably know if you're listening to this show, and my mom is 80 years old. And as we record this, we are 1 year and 1 day past us learning that my mom had cancer. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, she had, a very, very large tumor, probably grapefruit size on an ovary. She had some cancer in her uterus, and she was given a full hysterectomy at 79 years old. And this came, I'd say, right as my youngest brother got married and as my mom was planning to move across the country to live more closely to my middle brother. So he had moved to, college and never come back. And she's like, I'm going to spend the rest of my, end of my life with Brian.
With him.
Yeah. And so we're kind of working towards all that. My brother's going to get married and then my mom's going to leave. And instead, we're carting my mom to my brother's wedding in a wheelchair, and we're all standing off to the side talking to each other going, "Hey, mom looks like she's going to die." And it came out of kind of nowhere, so we got her right off. We got her right off to a doctor, and she had this procedure after we had to pick through a number of doctors who all were happy to just manage her into the grave, is the best way I could put it. Like nobody wanted to give a 79-year-old woman this big surgery and she's going to die and blah, blah, blah. And just luckily, my neighbor's son grew up to be a surgeon. And I contacted him and he said, "Oh, I went to medical school with a girl who's, in oncology OB now." And a couple of text messages later, my mom had a surgery. And and just the other, it's been about 2 weeks now. My mom it was time. She made it through. They gave her a clean bill of health and, she's going to move to Wisconsin.
That's fantastic.
Except how do you get her there? Because she can't sit too long. She can't, she needs to get to a bathroom. So we're like, well, we can't just drive her. A plane seemed like it wasn't a great idea. We had toyed with the idea of taking her in an RV because there'd be a bed and a bathroom with us. That turned out to be very cost prohibitive and a big and kind of a mess, logistically. And so in the end, my mom and I ended up on an Amtrak train across the country together in this little bed. And we spent this day and a half making this trip. And when we got there, my brother was going to pick us up at Union Station. And then I was literally just going to get back on a plane and fly home. So my brother was a little late and my mom and I are just sort of standing there. She's in a wheelchair and I'm standing there and we're talking, and it's this odd feeling that nothing's different. We're going to, what I mean? We're just talking the way we always have, right? And yet, in about 45 minutes, I don't think I'm ever going to see her again. Or if I do, it's going to be very, sporadic at the best. And the way she hugged me before we left, I'm telling you this whole story to tell you that the way my mom and I hugged each other before she left, I would dare you to feel that and think that she didn't love me the way she loved my brothers. And I'm absolutely, and I'm the only adopted one, and me right back to her, obviously. So I think it's lovely. But anyway, I have a tiny bit of context for what you're about to tell me that I didn't have a year ago. So I'm going to do my best to keep up. Can you just tell me when you first noticed the issue and how you noticed it? When you have diabetes and use insulin, low blood sugar can happen when you don't expect it. Gvoke HypoPen is a ready-to-use glucagon option that can treat very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes, ages 2 and above. Find out more. Go to gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with pheochromocytoma or insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. I just went to contournext.com/juicebox and noticed they've been a little sprucing up of my page. There's a chat box now. You can actually chat with somebody. Look at that. Chat with us. What do you want to talk about? Contour blood glucose meter. Thanks for that. Hi, thanks for the message. Please allow approximately 5 minutes for a team member to respond, as we may be helping another person living with diabetes. Oh, let's look at that. If you're busy, feel free to leave your name. Oh, okay. Well, that exists. Let me get out of this. You guys can check that out if you want. But honestly, you want to go to contournext.com/juicebox to learn about the Contour Next One blood glucose meter and to find out if it would be cheaper for you to buy the meter and the test strips in cash than you're paying right now through your pharmacy. Isn't that crazy? Like through your pharmacy benefit? And even if it's not, just get it through your insurance because it's a wonderful meter and it's got test strips that offer second chance testing. Understand what I'm saying by that? That's important. That means if you go in there and you hit the blood, but you don't quite hit it right or you don't get it all, you can go back and get more without ruining the accuracy of the test or ruining the blood test strip. Saving money and time and keeping your accuracy with the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. contournext.com/juicebox. Also at my link, a big orange button that says buy now. When you click on it, it takes you to places where you can buy the Contour Next One online. Walmart.com, Amazon, Walgreens, CVS, Kroger, Target, Rite Aid, and somebody wrote in and told me that I said the measure wrong. Hold on a second. Now, see what's happening now? Sorry. I said like measure or something like that. Give me a second. MEIGER. Here it is from Robin. Just a heads up. Measure is pronounced Meyer, and it's a Michigan-based department store, groceries, clothing, and home goods, and a great pharmacy. Well, let me just tell you something. Meyer, MEIGER, isn't Meyer, but I'll go along with it. contournext.com/juicebox. Get an accurate blood glucose meter. You need it and you deserve it. Links in the show notes of the audio app you're listening in right now, and links at Juicebox Podcast. They can be found. Am I speaking backwards like Yoda? I might be. Anyway, links to the advertisers are in the show notes of your player and at juiceboxpodcast.com. When you go through my links, you are supporting the show, and I very much appreciate that. Let me get you back to Rita now because the bulk of her story is yet to come, and it's something else.
It was September of, or I should say August of 2016, and I noticed, I go to the bathroom and I wipe, and I wouldn't even say there was blood. There was something very light pink when I cleaned it. I said, oh, that doesn't look right. And given my age, I go, I'm going to call my primary. I called my primary doctor. I go in to see her right away. And she says, well, I can't, as a primary, I can't do an examination down there, but I'm going to send you to a gynecologist. I had one, but mine had retired. So she put me through. They saw me right away. They examined me and they said, oh, it's probably vaginal dryness. And they gave me a cream and they sent me home. And this is now the month of September and I'm doing this vaginal cream. My husband and I had a trip planned with friends to go to Italy. I go to Italy. This bleeding has not stopped. It's like, it's always there and it goes away maybe for a day or two. It comes back. So and it was supposed to, they said within 30 days it should resolve itself. So now it's November and they renew, I gave a call to the doctor. They renew the prescription, but it's the month of November and I'm saying, I don't know, I want him to see me again. And I go back in. And that morning of that appointment, I wake up and I go take a shower. there is so much blood and so much clotting, and it was just gross. So my husband was already off at work. I just get myself dressed and I go straight to my appointment, though I'm about 3 hours early. I didn't really care. I go, somebody will see me. And they did. And they did a biopsy and send me home. And they said, okay, maybe it was, just some clots that were blocking it up. I don't know, whatever. I go home and I'm still thinking nothing of it. And then they get the results. They call me. Now we're in December. And the PA calls and she says, well, we've never seen this, but there's actually melanoma in your vagina. And we're running the pathology again because the pathologist has never seen it. But in the meantime, you've got an appointment with, gynecological oncology and dermatology and all these doctors. So, okay, I still didn't want to believe it was that. It's like, how can I have melanoma there? I go, I've never heard of it. They've never heard of it. It's a mistake. So it's now December 18th, and I go to the gynecological oncology appointment, and they take all the notes. They want to know the whole story. She examines me, and my husband's in the room with me. And she examines me, and she says, oh, yes, I see it. You have a tumor in your vagina, and obviously it's melanoma, given the pathology. Mm-hmm. And I'm lying on the table, and she's looking at me and I am saying nothing. And she goes, Rita, did you hear me? And I said, yeah, but I'm so confused. I'm looking at my husband, and in my head, I'm thinking to myself, I'm living my worst nightmare. This is what I feared the most, that one day I would get cancer. Are you kidding me? I have cancer. Right. So at this point, she says, the location is really not good, and there is nothing we can do. And I said, no, take it out, take everything out. I don't care. Just take it out. And there's got to be chemo. And they said, no, there isn't. But because for melanoma, there is no chemotherapy. And she says, but I will send you to the melanoma surgeon specialist and to the melanoma cancer team. So this is Christmas now. We're at December 18th. So I get through the whole holiday. And I have my PET scan in, I don't know, it was early January or between Christmas and New Year. I don't remember. They do a PET scan to see exactly what they're dealing with. And I see the surgeon. And sure enough, yes, there is. It's not anywhere else, but it's there. And the surgeon tells me they would have to do a complete hysterectomy. They're hoping the location of this tumor that they are not going to have to touch the bowel, because if they do, I would have to wear a colostomy bag. Mm-hmm. And, a whole bunch of other, and it's a big surgery. I gather this is a really big surgery. They had also to remove part of my vagina and all that stuff. So it's a big surgery. And he says, in the meantime, because of the size of this tumor, and I couldn't tell you how large it was, but maybe because of the size and the position of the tumor, we're going to start you on some treatment. And that's great. I was willing to do that. And I go off. And while we're getting ready to schedule surgery, he says, in the meantime, do some treatment and hopefully it'll shrink the tumor. So I see the my regular melanoma oncologist, and they have a plan, and it's extensive, and they're giving you so much information. And one of these is a combination immunotherapy drug called Ipi/Nivo. So I don't know if you know much about immunotherapy, but immunotherapy, unlike chemo that destroys everything and then rebuilds, immunotherapy actually revs up your immune system to wake it up to the fact that you've got cancer in your body and to attack it. Mm-hmm. And so I said, fine. And of course, they run through the list of side effects, which are many. And one of them, I remember very well, was type 1 diabetes. But the chance of that was like 1% chance you would get it. So
yeah, well, Rita, what's the chance you get vagina cancer?
Exactly, right. So you will soon find out that if there is a very small chance of getting it, I will get it. So anyway, I do this treatment. It was fine. I do the treatment. I handled it well. Um, I'm like 2 weeks into it. Like it's every 3 weeks, I think. And I'm 2 weeks into, I'm still working. All's good. And then one morning I wake up and I go, oh, I don't feel good. I start coughing and couldn't stop. I'm scheduled actually for another treatment. I go to the hospital. And I had called them, I think, and they said, come in, we'll take a look at you and we'll see what's going on. And of course, what I had developed was pneumonitis, which is sort of difficult to breathe. And I guess it's an inflammation of the lungs. I'm not sure, but so I cannot have treatment. So I'm put on steroids for 30 days. They stopped treatment because they said, we don't have time to wait for your tumor to shrink. We're going to take care of the pneumonitis because the way your lung capacity is right now, you're not going to make it through surgery. So we'll take care of the pneumonitis through steroids, and then we'll go straight into surgery, which is exactly what happened. So I had surgery in March, and he did not have to touch the bowel. He did the whole surgery. We're good. But I knew I would have to have radiation just because of, I guess, the type of cancer it is and the way they explained it to me, though he thinks he got it all. There's always can be specks of the cancer, sort of around, and we're going to do a radiation in the area, which they did. And now I finished that in the end of May. I have my PET scan in July, and they have told me that if all is well, then that's it. We'll just follow up with scans every, 6 months for a while or 3 months. And so I do a PET scan in July, which is, the full body scan, and they found cancer in the lymph nodes in the groin and something in my lungs. So, okay, I have to start immunotherapy again. This time they're giving me another drug because that combo, my body doesn't tolerate it.
Right.
And they gave me one of the two drugs that were in that combo. It's called Opdivo, and I had that, and I started that in August. And that went really well. I'm doing very good. In early December, I have my PET scan. It's showing things are sort of shrinking, but still there, but doing well. And it's December 21st of 2017, and I'm at the hospital for my infusion. And of course, every time you do the infusion, they do labs. And I'm sitting at the chair. They've got the IV going. They're just waiting on the labs before they start. And the nurse comes in and she says, hey, are you feeling okay today? I go, yeah, I feel great. She goes, oh, because your blood sugars are at 622. I go, what? And she says, I go, they're certainly wrong. And she goes, yeah, we're going to repeat the glucose. And they repeat it and comes back. She goes, no, now you're at 530. Doctor wants to see you right away. There's no infusion today. So I go up to the office, and that's when they tell me, they said, we think you have developed type 1 diabetes as a result of this. So off you go to the emergency room to be admitted.
Rita, before we get to that,
yeah,
I want to make sure I understand. In the course of 2 years, you get diagnosed with an incredibly rare cancer inside of your vagina. They take it out, and you're getting treatments, and then you develop cancers in other places. You get more treatments, and then like 2 years after the initial diagnosis, you get the type 1. Is that right?
Sorry, 1 year after. December of 2017. Yeah, I'm sorry, I might have given the wrong date.
No, I'm
1 year after.
No, it was a lot of information. I might not have been keeping up.
Yeah.
So, okay. So that's kind of how I wanted to go over it. You're in his office. You looking for a window to jump out of, or where's your mindset at the moment when he tells you?
I'm saying, so part of it is, the cancer is such a big thing that everything else sort of takes a back seat, because I go, it's okay. It's okay. Like, I have no idea what type 1 diabetes is. I know people get diabetes. I probably know what type 2 is because you're overweight and you're not exercising, like just the usual, what people think. Type 1, I have no idea what is involved.
And you're actually living the phrase, at least it's not cancer, because you know what because that's what everyone says. Yes. Anytime anyone gets sick with anything and it's not cancer, like, at least it's not cancer. But then once you have cancer, I guess the phrase is, well, at least it's not cancer, but you have way more context for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so my thought in my head is, well, at least the cancer's shrinking. I don't care if I've got type 1. At least this seems to be working. Like, I'm still here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I've had another year of life. I've seen my grandson grow up a little bit. Like, I'm good.
Mhm.
It's okay. And so anyway, I could tell that they were, I mean, my oncologist was, I'm so sorry this has happened. And I'm going, it's all right. It's okay. Send me to, um, she says, well, you go ahead, because I was waiting to be transported with the wheelchair to the emergency room, and they weren't coming. And so she says, you know what, are you okay to walk? I go, yeah, like, I'm feeling totally fine. And I will say the only thing I had in retrospect was probably maybe a week before, I was really thirsty. And I did notice that. And again, I didn't think anything of that. And my blood sugars up until that point were really good. Like, I'd never had an issue. So anyway, my husband and I walk over to the emergency room, and I go, what do I tell him? She goes, you tell them that your blood sugars are high. She goes, I think you've got type 1. She says, but if she's not understanding what you're saying, have them give me a call. This is the oncologist referring to the emergency
Yeah,
room
right,
doctor.
right, right.
So I get in there, yeah, and they do my blood sugar, and of course I'm high, and they're doing the intake, and the doctor is there, and the emergency room nurse is there, and I just say to her, I go, she goes, what brings you in? I tell her the story. I go, you know what? I think I've developed type 1 diabetes. And she looks at me like, no, you just don't develop type 1 diabetes. She goes, no. I go, look, just call my doctor. And sure enough, that's exactly what it was. But it is immunotherapy. I mean, this was already 4 years ago. Already it's come a long way. It was so new that even just your regular doctor, if you're not exposed to this, you're not even going to know what this is. Like, this doesn't make any sense. So that day, I get admitted to the hospital. I am not in the ICU. I'm in the regular hospital. And, they start doing all the tests. And I find out that my biggest fear was, do I have to give myself insulin? Like, you've got to be able to give me a pill. I don't do needles. Like, that was me. I don't do needles. I don't want to learn how to give myself. Like, I'm very grossed out by that. I go, no, it's like, I'm sure there's something. I am still, I guess, sort of in denial. And no, I mean, I was in there for 2 days. They taught me how to inject insulin, and it wasn't too bad. They brought in on, I guess she's the educator on, in the hospital, and they're teaching me the formula. Like, I don't even remember it now because I'm on a pump now, but for this many carbs, this much insulin. And looking back, I was told a number of things that were not right, which of course I knew nothing, such as, when you inject insulin, you need to be eating immediately. Like, do not be waiting around. Like, so no such thing as a pre-bolus. And,
right.
And anyway, so I do this and I learn, and I'm doing well. I don't know. I made it through. I was doing okay, but my sugars were, if I were to look back, I think anything, around 220, I considered a victory. Like, I had no idea
Was that
what my
because
range. I mean,
was that because that you had seen a 600 at the hospital and 200 seemed much lower?
yeah, and I think they sent me home with something under 250. So if they sent me home, and then I remember, this is how crazy I was, and crazy only in retrospect. Like, 3 days after this diagnosis, my husband and we do Christmas with the kids, and then my husband and I fly off to Canada, where the rest of our family is. I don't even know what I'm doing. I mean, I've got the formula, but at this point, I know my sugars are like really high, and I've put in a call to the not to the oncologist, but at this point I have an endocrinologist, and I must say she guided me through it. And I don't know if it's because I was under enough control right now to sort of get through things, and we're going to deal with the nitty gritty of it soon enough, just sort of like let her familiarize herself with carbs
Rita,
and insulin.
you're
And
such a lovely person. Here's what I imagine. It's Christmas and New Year's. We'll get to this lady after I've drank myself silly. That's what I figure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's fine. Yeah. She's not at 400 anymore. She's good. Yeah. So we'll send her home.
Let's talk to her on January 5th, shall we?
Yeah. So I go back. So I think my treatment was canceled. My next scheduled cancer treatment was canceled because they said, let your body kind of get used to what's happening right now. And but we'll start it up again because damage is done. It's like you got what we feared, and so we can continue. And they did. So that's I was going to say something else, but I can't remember right now about that whole time period. But yeah, so that's it. So eventually, so what happened is that the immunotherapy drugs sort of rev up your immune system, and it revved it up so much that it didn't recognize that the beta cells were necessary. It considered the beta cells something foreign, I guess, and so it just basically killed them all. And so that's what happened.
And we'll never know if you had markers for diabetes. Like if you, isn't it crazy to think that you might have lived your whole life with genetic markers for type 1? It just wasn't happening. And it maybe never would have happened if somebody wouldn't have supercharged your immune system.
Yeah, and maybe they were there, but in my family, on either of my parents' side, nobody has any immuno.
There's no autoimmune at all.
An autoimmune, no, none. And so so it attacked the pancreas, and in fact,
and you didn't have kids, so you can't test them.
So I didn't know exactly, and I know that when they did the C-peptide a year late. When did they do the C-peptide? Initially, I guess. I was at 7.0, so I was in the range. But when they do it a year later, in 2019, I'm at less than 0.1. Yeah. So I was doing well until then. And then what happened is I got a whole bunch of autoimmune diseases. Yeah, so in that period, I developed vitiligo. So I have, which is like, where your skin loses pigmentation. So I have that in my hands and arms, my feet and legs. I develop colitis, and which has vitiligo is not a biggie. I mean, I can live with that. Colitis, I'm on colitis ends up playing a role later on, but I'm on medication for the colitis. And at some point at this time, I also lose production of saliva in my mouth, mucuses in my nose, tears in my eyes. So sort of no mucuses from neck on up. And that was extremely difficult. That was a very difficult side effect because without saliva, it's difficult to talk. Extremely difficult to eat and swallow food. Mm-hmm. Of course, you've always got a stuffy nose. And then the eyes, it hurts to blink because there is no tears. And then, I was going to say, and then when you cry, because I'm so frustrated, no tears come out. And
that's
to
frustrating.
Cry with no tears, that's traumatic in and of itself. I can't even cry. I'm saying to my husband, this is terrible.
Is that an autoimmune disease? The no tears, no mucus?
So they sent me to. So that's another thing. So I go to a lot of different specialists at this point because I go to rheumatology. I see a rheumatologist, and really, he told me, he goes, "This drug is so new. These drugs are so new. We really don't have a track record with other patients." Mm-hmm. But he looked it up, and it is not Sjogren's because you don't have any of the markers, I guess, or whatever. It's not Sjogren's, but it is like a Sjogren's. So I'm actually on a drug right now. And I'm not sure if it's the drug that reestablished all my mucuses or if it's just time, mm-hmm. Because eventually I stopped this Opdivo. It was too much for my body. We had to stop. And it wasn't because, we stopped the infusions. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was just
So
about,
I get all that.
as you said that, I thought, well, maybe can you induce Sjogren's disease? And then that's not that.
No, it's not. No.
Yeah.
And I've asked again, I asked the rheumatologist recently, I go, I just want to be clear. This is not Sjogren. He goes, it is not Sjogren. He goes, I don't even know that they have a name for this yet. They just know this is happening.
So I have a number of questions. Can we kind of like go backwards for a second here and pick through some things? So all the way back to the beginning, just because if I don't ask, I'm going to wonder for the rest of my life. How do they Rita, I'm 51 and I feel like I know what the vagina is. You know what I mean? Like anatomically, but like, did they take parts away? Do you still, did you still urinate that way?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you have sex?
No.
Okay. Okay. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
All right. How is, what's that like? Cause I think it's possible that younger people hear 63 and they're like, oh, you don't have sex when you're 63, but sure you do. And so like, how do you adjust with that? Or is sex the last thing on your mind while you're going through all these things?
It is the last thing on your mind.
Okay.
It really is because, I guess when you're faced with living or dying, it is really, for me, at least for me, it is like the last thing on my mind. And so I've had, up until now, like a wonderful, it is what it is. And you just sort of make it work. But it's, for me, it's okay because there's so many moments. Life is made up of so many moments that, all those moments make it worth it, Yeah.
No.
And so a part isn't there, but it's okay. But yeah, it is hard to wrap your brain around it. And it's not a decision that, everybody would make, I understand that.
No, I would, trust me. You could, if I thought it was going to save my life, I think you could pretty much take anything from me. So that makes sense to me. Is it visible? Like what?
No.
Like from the outside, you can't tell what happened.
Never.
Okay.
Oh no. And if you were to meet me in the street and there are people that I see, nobody would ever know. So my cancer is stage 4. I mean, it is. So this cancer is not even staged. It's not staged because typically by the time you find it, the doctors find it, it's really a stage 4. So they don't even bother.
Yeah.
Like the doctors had told me a while back, like I was never under the illusion that, hey, we're going to do all this and it'll go away and it'll never come back. That was never the way it was presented to me. It was always, we're going to consider this to be a chronic disease and there'll be periods of time where you're fine, you're clear, and all we're doing are scans. And then there's periods of time where we will find something and you're back in treatment. And it's like my surgeon had told me early on before he did the surgery, he said at that time, so this is I spoke to him, let's say 2017 is when I'm having the surgery. And he said, there's really like not a lot. There's a lot of research in the pipeline for this cancer because that's not where the funding is. That's not where a lot of the focus is going on. He goes, but there's a lot coming up in the next 5 years. And he didn't say it's unfortunate that you got it now, but sort of like, but here we are now. And so we got to work with what we have. So my philosophy right now, if you will, or my way of getting through it is that science has to stay one step ahead of me. As long as my cancer doesn't progress so far that they have nothing left to give me, I'm good. Like I'm fine. I'm willing to try. And in fact, you'll hear that I'm on other stuff right now. So that's, that's how I look at it. And
Rita,
not to get too,
you've been living like that for about 5 years now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you have cancer. It is.
Yes.
And they are beating it back with the therapies that
with the therapies, some brand new ones and some that I have yet to try that are just in the pipeline right now that are coming. Some that are I'm not there yet, but some that I know, some promising ones that are waiting FDA approval, which should be coming within the next, I think, less than a year. So I'm just trying to I give it all I've got to sort of make that science, stay ahead of me. And that's how I look at it. But so when you look at me, you would never know I'm sick. Now, I have lost, initially from the start of this, I probably lost I have lost roughly 40 pounds. A lot of that loss came after the diabetes diagnosis. So I'm not sure if it's that. I am not sure. Like what diabetes forced me to do and cancer was really change. Well, if diabetes changed the way I eat in terms of not so much what I eat, because I was a pretty good eater, but how much I eat. Diabetes has forced me to be a healthier person, believe it or not. I think.
No, I know that, but like a portion, you mean like you just smaller portions?
Yeah, it's not, at the beginning, you should have seen me. And even now, I just still do it. My husband goes, oh, come on now. I mean, I weigh everything. I weigh my food and I'm like, I'm a little OCD that way. So I carb count. I do all this stuff. Yeah. And, I have to, it's the one way I can control, and, anyway, as much as I can control the diabetes but I think I'm doing a good job now.
I'm certain you are. What, do you see a therapist once the cancer comes?
So so when the cancer came, there was a support group at the hospital for melanoma patients, and I did that. And then COVID stopped that. So in the middle of all of this, I find, I was home for a year following that surgery because I had surgery and then treatment. And, it takes a lot out of you. And I was home and I decided I wanted to do some yoga. So I found a cancer center that had a lot of holistic approach in terms of yoga and exercise, and there's therapy there. And and it's all through Zoom now. The yoga I don't do as much because I do work now, but I do Zoom cancer support. You really need it. I'll speak for myself. I really need it. Yeah. I'm very open about what's happened to me. If somebody were to ask, I would certainly tell the story. I think there's a story to tell, but I think therapy has helped me with that.
How about,
and like I said, if you were to look at me, you'd never know I was sick.
I know who you are. I've seen pictures of you.
Yeah.
You smoke the weed now? Does that help with? No. Did you?
Not necessary. No, not necessary. You don't have I haven't been there. No. And through all the treatments that I've had, and it's funny how the mind or the body kind of like forgets. Like when I think back, I was like, I was pretty sick. I was sick, and I look at pictures of myself and I go, oh yeah, I can tell. Like at the time, I couldn't tell I was sick, but now looking back and seeing the way I am now, I go, yeah, I could tell I was sick. And at one point I'm in the hospital for probably DKA, but I'm in the hospital and I look in the mirror and I go, oh my goodness, look at the way I look. So I've had those moments, but yeah. What was your question?
I didn't know if
so not necessary. Yeah.
Like not nausea really or anything like that.
No.
Okay.
No.
Wow. Can I ask, just getting away from all this for half a second, looking more at the kind of, I don't know, the psychological side of it, I guess. Has your outlook on what life is changed? And what your days mean and what your time means, like that kind of thing?
Definitely.
How?
So it's changed. First of all, so I've started meditating. I do that, but I'm really grateful. It's like, I am so grateful for my husband because like without this, like I know I'm lucky. Like I really, despite it all, I am lucky. He has been with me for the whole thing, because there are times when you're dealing with all of this, it's just a lot for the brain to absorb. And even now, I mean, I might look like, or I might feel like I'm good, but when you go to those appointments, it's always like anxiety provoking. When I have a scan, it's anxiety provoking, all those things. And so I'm grateful for that. I am so grateful for to see my kids like 5 years out, and okay, this is what they're doing. And now I have a brand new grandson, so I get to see him. And I look at the day, and I just say, oh gosh, it's such a beautiful day. I do so much. I do a lot of walking, and I started that early. I started that actually before cancer and diabetes, but I do a lot of it now. I have some extremely great friends that are there for me. And so I'm so grateful to everything, So yes, definitely.
How about things that just eat time? Like, I'll make a very simple example. Like, do you still watch television, or did you prior, or is that one of those things where you think this doesn't matter anymore? Like, I'm not trying to kill time anymore.
No, I'm not trying to kill time. I'm not a big TV watcher, so I don't watch a lot, but I do read a lot of books. Mm-hmm. I love that. So prior to the cancer diagnosis, my husband and I did a lot of traveling, and we did a few trips with where we do walking vacations. So we walked through Spain, we walked through Portugal, we've done a lot of that. And of course, cancer through a monkey wrench in that, because for a long time I was not, this is even before COVID, I was not allowed to travel. The doctors didn't want me too far from a good hospital, a hospital that would know how to help what I've got, And then of course COVID hits, but just and then diabetes, and diabetes was, I've had some scary moments with it, and it was like, it's scary, but I think it was in October of 2019. So before COVID, we did do a trip out west to the Grand Canyon and the Four Corners area, and I hiked. And so that was scary because, okay, I'm going to be somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I got my pump. At this point, I got my pump and my CGM, but it's like, in the back of my mind, oh man, what am I going to do? Like, okay, I got to bring all the snacks. I got to bring all the glucose tabs, and all those are really like heavy on my mind, and even now, like this evening, we're actually traveling, and we're going to Vermont, and I'm in Georgia right now, but we're going to Vermont, and okay, I got to bring all my supplies, and that's all. Don't forget anything, getting through security. It's like it all works out, but that doesn't mean I don't stress about it.
Stressed out about it. Has there ever been any conversation with you or your doctors about some of the things earlier in your life in this? Like, for instance, not being able to have kids, is there a possibility that there was something wrong in there the whole time and you didn't know? Or is
Who knows?
There's no way to know about stuff like that, right?
There's no way to know. I mean, I know they did some testing, like genetic testing, but even what I have and what I understand, and I'm not going to pretend I even understand what the doctor said, but mine doesn't really have anything. They have no idea. So when I asked the surgeon, he says, who knows, like maybe the environment, like we don't even know enough about this.
There's not even
cancer.
Enough people that have it that you could get
no.
like some data from people like, oh, there's, a certain percentage of them that have had similar other issues. And there's not even that.
No, there is a Facebook group that I belong to that is dedicated to mucosal melanoma patients. And so it's the variety of us. It's vaginal, rectal, sinus, but there's not a lot of us. And it's, I don't know that anybody has found out the reason why this has happened. I know there is a registry. I've learned through the group, there is a registry forming right now on rare cancers with the hope that we will have some of the answers. And just getting back to my diabetes, I follow a lot of, I'm always like sort of looking. That's how I found, actually, my husband found your podcast to kind of help me along. Mm-hmm. But I belong to, I guess it's type 1, I don't know, type 1 something. And one day they send sort of like a little newsletter. And in it they were starting to do research in UCSF regarding, they've discovered that people on immunotherapy, very few get diabetes. And I just reached out to that. I had a name of a person who they interviewed, and I reached out to her, and they're just starting. And this was probably maybe 3-4 years ago that I reached out, mm-hmm. and they sent me like a kit, like labs to get done. And I just sent my labs off to them. I'll never know what they find. I don't think they're using it for research purposes, but my oncologist had said, what they're trying to do is, the patients that do develop type 1 is trying to find out, is there a commonality in it? Or is there something that we could give these patients? Is there a drug out there, or do we need to develop a drug that if we give it to them prior to immunotherapy, it will save the beta cells? Mm-hmm. I think this is what they're working on, but I don't, I Google it every once in a while to see if there's any progress made. But I mean, in my case, it's too late, I think. But that's okay.
Yeah. Well, but maybe it helps somebody in the future, because the therapy's growing and it's morphing and getting better, and they're trying to, because I mean, look what it's doing for you. Really, exactly. It's put the cancer in like stasis, right? So you're not getting worse and you're not dying. It's amazing, honestly.
Yeah, it truly is amazing.
Yeah, it makes me embarrassed for the notes I've written in front of myself, because at one point I was jotting things down. Georgia, not able to have children, and I at my shorthand for vagina, I made an oval, and then I drew a line from 12 to 6 o'clock.
Yeah. No.
I was like, I drew it, and I was like, that doesn't look like a vagina at all. But I knew at least what I was doing when I was going. It's just such a crazy. It's a crazy story.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. So, let me ask you, when you got the type 1 diagnosis, do they give you, like, you get to the endocrinologist, the holidays over, etc. You're back from Canada, if I'm listening and remembering correctly.
Yeah.
You get a pump, you get pens, you get needles, do you get a glucose
monitor?
I
get the needle. I get a needle, and I don't know if this is typical of other type 1s. I have no idea. But my blood sugar, oh my goodness, so unstable. It was like, I think I was pricking my finger like about 10 times a day. And even that, and I don't know if it was me just being worried, but I was forever. And my blood sugars were like kind of all over the place. So then we are in, I don't know, it was in April. Okay, now hold on. What year am I at? I'm at, I think it's 2018 or 2019, but I'll find out in a second. But I say to the doctor, hey, I at least want a CGM. I've gotten used to giving myself needles. Can I just get that thing in my arm, which tells me where I'm at? And she goes, well, if you're going to have that, I want you to have a pump. So they give me the pump, and I get a pump. I don't even know there's choices out there. So
right.
I get the Medtronic pump with the CGM, and I said, great. So they start me on the pump. And again, and thinking back and telling you the story, another crazy thing that we did is I get the pump on a Thursday, and I meet the pump trainer, and she sets me up and shows me how to do it, and we're all good. And the next day, we're heading to a wedding 3.5 hours away. And I thought nothing of just leaving, because okay, I'll have my pump. It'll be great. And I'll go. So we're driving, and my sugars are going up and up and up, and I'm just pumping more insulin. And I really don't understand what I'm doing. Like I have an idea, but I go, this is not working. And I'm eating, and my sugars are like in the 300s. And I go, why isn't this supposed to be better? And I do call the endocrinologist on call at the hospital. I'm like 3.5 hours away. Watch your sugars, increase your basal, like blah, 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 whatever she told me. I'm doing all this. Well, by the Saturday morning, I was so sick. I mean, literally, I'm on the floor. And I said, I have to get to a hospital. I go, I don't feel right. This isn't good. And I am not going, I don't know if I mentioned, but we were in Knoxville, and nothing against Knoxville, but I want to go to my own hospital, because I'm still thinking of the cancer, and I just want to be where people know my case, and I don't want to have to explain all this, because this is, rare. And so we make the 3.5-hour trip back to Atlanta. And
you're in DKA?
In DKA. Yeah, I don't know it. So I get to the hospital, and they're waiting for me. We had made the call, go straight, do not go home, do not do anything, straight to the hospital. They take my sugars. I'm in DKA. And I end up in the ICU. But, in the emergency room, they take off my infusion set, and my cannula was bent. So bent cannula. I wasn't getting any of the of the insulin I was pumping in.
That easy. Yeah. And you wouldn't know to look because you're too early into it.
I am. Yes. I don't know what, what I was doing really. I really shouldn't have gone on the trip, or at least I should not have started the pump when I wasn't going to be home. And so I'm in DKA. And at that point, the endocrinologist says, "Oh no, and I don't think I had the CGM then." And he says, "No, the CGM is like, I don't care about," because they were saying, do 6 weeks with the pump to get you used to it. And then we'll introduce the CGM. And they go, "Never mind all that, CGM for you right now."
Yeah.
And I did that. And that certainly helped me a lot. I did have another episode of DKA so this was, I looked at my notes. This has happened in May of 2018. So 6 months after diagnosis, I got the pump. And then in November of 2019, I did end up with DKA again. I really don't know how that happened because I was my sugars were not terribly high. And I'm going to call it high in the 250s, but not enough for me to, and then all of a sudden, I just didn't feel good. And once again, it was DKA. And that was the last time I was in the hospital for diabetes.
Do you have a firmer grasp? You do now. Like your husband found the podcast?
Yes.
So
here's a funny story. Yeah. And so he's a big podcaster, and I don't even know what I'm doing. I go to a nutritionist who was no help at all, because when I tell my endocrinologist what she's asked me to do, the nutritionist, in terms of what I eat and donate, she goes, "Oh no," she goes, "She's treating you like a type 2. Forget that. That's not what you're supposed to be doing." She played with the settings a little bit. But anyway, he finds your podcast and I listen to it. And then it is, I see that you and the whole bunch of diabetic specialists, if you will, are coming to Atlanta at a JDRF event. And that's February of 2020, just before COVID hit.
Were you there?
I was there, but this is what happened. My husband goes and see you because, again, he never leaves. He's so in this with me. He listens to you, and I go listen to Jenny.
Yeah, Jenny and I spoke at the same time at the first hour. I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, you were. Yeah, unfortunately, you were talking at the same time, and we get in there, and that was actually very enlightening, because we get in there and it's full of people. And all these young kids. And it was funny because we go to lunch and my husband goes, "See these people? They're eating everything. Nobody's weighing their food. Nobody's doing anything. You need to be like them, Rita, not this like weighing and watching it." And so, yeah, we learned a lot on that trip. And in fact, if I can say, I did hire Jenny, and Jenny has helped me tremendously.
Yeah.
Through managing all of this. I mean, she's sort of, I go to the doctor now and they don't even, "Oh, look at these numbers. You're doing great. Keep it up." Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't adjust anything anymore.
Jenny and I don't talk about it, of course, because she's a professional healthcare provider, but I'm aware that a lot of people that listen to the podcast see Jenny.
Yeah.
And so it's wonderful that you did you see
Jenny?
So did you see Jenny and I speak together in the second hour? Or
no.
Did you go to something?
Where was I? I might have gone to something else.
Oh, Rita,
that was
your mistake. We were delightful.
That was a mistake.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I've done wrong.
Yeah,
exactly.
Really. If you've made any mistake, really, it was not seeing Jenny and I speak together.
But that event was so helpful, like in so many ways. Like really, it helpful to hear the speaker speak, helpful to see the people, helpful to see parents and vendors, like just everybody. I thought that was a pivotal point for me. I really believe that.
Yeah. The person who ran that event did a wonderful job. And I don't know if it's the JDRF. I don't even know if they're doing this stuff in person anymore at some of these places, to be honest. But God, I think it was Kim, right? And
could have been. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look.
I don't think they've had one in Atlanta, because I would have.
No,
I would have seen it.
I'm not going to use her last name because it's not my business to say. But Kim was terrific, and she set up an amazing event. And then we all bugged the hell out of there because the world was coming to an end.
Yes, exactly. After like 2 weeks later, it all sort of fell apart.
Yeah, the flight I took home from Atlanta was weird, like Walking Dead empty. And like so much so that it was clear things were happening. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, this is it. I guess people are serious about this COVID thing. And I had 3 seats to myself. My feet. I flew home like laying across 3 seats because there was just no one on the plane.
Nobody there.
But I didn't meet you at that event, or your husband?
You did not meet me. No, you didn't meet me. And I'm not sure that he went up to you. Like, of course, at this point, I probably started listening to your podcast in maybe fall of 2019. Mm-hmm. So, so no, I didn't meet you then, but
Rita, anyway, I want the real story. You were like, the guy's, he's okay, but this Jenny's fantastic. He's
okay. You take the guy. Yeah, I'm going to go.
You take the guy. I'm going to go check on Jenny, because you tried a nutritionist and didn't get good help, but Jenny's different.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's totally different. So
that's great.
So,
that's wonderful.
Anyway,
I'm sorry they don't do those things anymore, but and the JDRF seemed to I don't know. They changed direction during COVID, it seems like to me. About the in-person stuff at the very least. So, okay. So now you're using a pump. What do you, that is an algorithm too? Are you using Control IQ or Omnipod 5 or something like that? Or are you still managing?
No. So I'm all on Medtronic. I actually don't do auto, they have the auto mode where it sort of does it for you. I don't do that. I do manual mode, and I prefer that. I like to control it myself and sort of figure out.
I'm sorry, are you using CGM from Medtronic?
I am.
You are.
Yeah.
And I'm
on the newest pump, I just got the 770, and I'm doing well. I find their CGM quite accurate actually compared to the 670.
Great.
And and I'm doing well, and I've got my rates sort of dialed in, I think. So I'm probably about 93% in range, and my A1C back in April was 6.2. So I could bring it a little lower, but
you're happy.
That's where I am right now. Yeah. I'm happy. I mean, compared to where I started, rarely am I low. Like, I think I'm less than 1% low. So
Rita,
that's
I think you're about to be famous at Medtronic, because right now I imagine someone's running around the office going, someone finally said something positive about our CGM on that podcast.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I just got the new one, and part of it is like, okay, I had an option, I suppose, but I don't feel like starting over again and dealing with insurance and it's like, never mind. It's just too hard. And it hasn't been, it's been fine for me. So I just said, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Rita, that's the exact attitude that helps me stay married. Because Kelly's probably just like, I don't want to go through it all,
Yeah, right.
So much trouble. It's okay. So much trouble to get the sofa out of here, and
all of that. It's who needs that?
Yeah,
right?
I'll just stay with them, I guess. Wow, it's amazing. We're up on an hour, but I'm not rushing you away. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I guess the only other thing I'd like to talk about that people don't, maybe doctors don't understand, is how difficult it is for a type 1 diabetic to get a PET scan. I find it probably one of the most stressful things that happens. And I don't think enough doctors understand what is involved. So when I have a PET scan the night before, okay, I watch what I don't watch what I eat, but I tend to eat a little, careful, because I want my blood sugar to stay in range. Because for the PET scan, I am not allowed to bolus or eat anything. I think it's 6 hours ahead of the scan. So I do the scan first thing in the morning. I usually, we schedule it then. Mm-hmm. And it isn't so much that I go high, because with the high, I can play with the basal, but it's when I go low. And yes, I can play with the basal when I go low, but I cannot take a glucose tab. I cannot eat anything. So I have to keep it within a certain range without really the aid of any insulin. I do have basal going into till an hour before, but I find that is extremely stressful. I've gotten better at it because I've had many PET scans, but I think it's something that is not understood. And in fact, when I first, I didn't even have the pump, but I was having a PET scan that day, and it was at the wrong time of day. And, I think they scheduled it for the afternoon, which is terrible. And my sugars are climbing. And I called the endo's office to see what am I supposed to do. And they said, oh, just give yourself, go ahead, bolus. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to. So I get to the PET scan, and the technologist says to me, hey, you didn't give yourself any insulin, did you? And I go, yeah, actually, I just did to bring down my sugars. They go, oh, you're not allowed, no PET scan. I go, what? And I think the trauma of that visit, I started to cry. They called the radiation oncologist in to talk to me because I said, it doesn't matter. I'll just wait here till the bolus leaves, and then you're going to do the PET scan. And they go, no, we can't. So they brought in the radiation oncologist, who finally explained to me that I was going to be scheduled the next morning. They couldn't do it because they'd get a false reading on the test. But I thought, as a patient who I'm about to find out, this test is going to tell me if my cancer, if my treatment is working or not working, if my cancer has spread or not. And for, doctors to not know that, I thought that was so basic. So wouldn't you know that? I would think.
Yeah. So you're saying that they just tell you, look, come in tomorrow. This happens to a lot of people. Like, there are a lot of tests, like there's even fasting blood work where they say to you, like, you can't eat after midnight. And then that's a lot of pressure. Well, what if I get low and I need to eat? Or what if, but you can't even bolus. Like, so you can get a basal insulin, but you can't put a bolus in? That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So I'm trying to figure out why that is. But,
well, I guess what I'm thinking is the basal sort of mimics your pancreas, right? Sort of slow and steady. And that's okay till about an hour before. And then they have me turn off my pump, and I remove everything from me. But yeah. And so I think yes, exactly. It is like extremely stressful.
And it's in the way they say it to you, like it's nothing. Like, just don't eat or drink until you come in.
It's like, it's no problem. And, and the other thing that really gets me is, I have all of my, I got the pump and I got the CGM, and it's always a production because I can't go in with them. Like, I can't go in with this equipment. It says so in the literature. And I'm guessing it's the same thing for all the other companies. You can't take these devices into MRIs and PET scans and stuff. And inevitably, every single time, oh, yeah, it'll be fine. And I go, no, the literature, and I'm a rule follower, and the literature says you can't take it in. And if it says you can't take it in, I'm not going to take it in. And I can't put it anywhere. So, I give it to my husband, who then leaves the area, and we're all good. And it's only when I say, well, okay, I'll bring it in, but if it breaks, you guys are paying for it. And then they go, oh, no, you please do what you want to do. It's like,
I have to. So it's. Well, we just had this for Arden, right? Where she had to have a fasting test in the morning. And we're in the office the day before, and the woman's like, the nurse, she says, no eating or drinking after midnight. And I said, well, can you tell me, what if her blood sugar starts to fall? Are we able to stop that, or do we have to call the test off? And she goes, no, you can give her insulin. And I went, yeah, that's not how that works. So I'm like, I said, I think I can do a pretty good job of keeping her blood sugar stable. I said, but if she gets too low, she might have to drink some juice. Would that be okay? Well, you're not supposed to. I was like, so if we do we call and cancel? And she just doesn't have an answer. I'll go talk to the doctor. She comes back out, comes back in, and then you get a blanket, like, don't eat or drink, and if it happens, you can cancel. But I don't even think they know if that's, like, Arden was just having endoscopy, like, they were just going down her throat, like, with a little bit of, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, could she have sucked on a lollipop? Like and nobody but you're talking to somebody who told you to take insulin if your blood sugar gets low. So you're like, well, are they really going to have an answer for me? No. It just seems like the answer is no. But it's said to you so blasé, like, oh, just don't eat or drink after midnight. And immediately you're like, well, I don't know if I can do that or not. And then you have all this other stuff on top of it, like the the anxiety of like, nobody gives a crap if they don't get a blood test tomorrow, but you're trying to find out if you're,
right.
Yeah, your life.
And I think the other thing that they're, because they'll ask, and do you have they don't say type 1 or 2. Do you have diabetes? Oh yeah, then don't do this. Don't take your pills. Don't do. No, but I'm not on that. I'm on insulin. Do I take insulin? And they sort of like,
yeah, they don't,
like not really. So I don't even think, it's just like, they're just reading a script and it's just diabetes. And to them, it doesn't really matter which one it is. So a type 2 can go without eating for 6 hours and not worry about blood sugars, I guess. And of course, for type 1s, the challenge is a little tougher. So anyway, so that's the one thing I'd love to like, I wish, and I'm not even sure, where you begin. I mean, is it, they're so disconnected, right? The radiology department with maybe endocrinology. Really, you sort of got to know, like, if you're sending a patient, or if a patient calls you and said, hey, I'm going to have a scan, can I not, can I do this or not do that? That they would sort of have a real answer, not sort of like somebody that really doesn't know. And really, it's no difference to her if I get a scan or not, if it's canceled or not. What does she care?
Yeah, no, I know.
It becomes my problem. So that's the biggest challenge. That's a very big challenge.
So my mom is now with my brother, right? And my brother is handling a lot of my mom's medical stuff for the first time. And I think he's finding it overwhelming. And I said, can I give you a piece of advice about talking to doctor's offices? And he's like, sure. I said, you have to find a very polite way to do this. And he goes, okay. I said, but you're telling them what to do. You're not asking. And and I said, there's a way they do things. And that might work for most people. And I said, but if you're not getting the answers to the questions you need, or if they're not doing something that they need to do, there's a way to say what you need without being demanding. And you almost are, I really do feel badly saying this out loud, but you're kind of directing them without letting them know you're directing them.
Right.
And it's important because they can't know all of your details.
Right.
And there's no way for them to know. And oftentimes you're talking to people who have answered ads for jobs, who are schedulers or answering phone calls, or they sometimes they're not even nurses, and they don't really know. And you're asking them these big questions because they're your point of contact, but they don't have an answer. And then, sometimes they just say the first thing that comes to mind, or what they hear other people saying, or what worked for somebody else. And you can't get frustrated with them. You sort of have to say, this is what we need. I need you to call this person. I need you to fax this document. You can't just say, I want you to set this up for me, because they might not know what that means to you.
Right.
He's having a better time of it now that he's been more, I guess, proactive.
And the same thing I find when I was in the hospital, and I'm with my CGM and pump now. So I think in some of those visits, the pump came off, obviously, because of my bent cannula. And so they had to bring my sugars back down and did it through an IV and all that. But, I really try to keep, to get back on everything like really quickly, and I try to be like, inevitably, when a few times I went in, they're taking I have no CGM on my arm, and they're taking my blood sugars, and it is what it is. It does, whatever, they take it. And I go, okay, and you're coming back in like a couple of hours to do it again, right? Oh no, you're scheduled again to do your, we're going to check your blood like at 6 a.m, let's say. And I go, no, I can't go for 6 hours without it checking. So I've learned that, I've been in the hospital a few times now that, before my husband leaves the room, I said, bring me my CGM, not my CGM, but my glucose monitor right in front of me. Because during the night, I'm going to check my own sugar.
Right.
And sure enough, one night I go, I was sleeping. I opened my eyes. I go, I just don't feel right. And I check my sugars and they're at 40. So I ring the bell and they all come running. And I said to them, I told you guys, don't let me go for 6 hours without, so in all this to say, you sort of have to be your own advocate. And I guess that is sort of what you're saying. You don't have to be mean about it, but it's just sort of, Yeah, like I know what I need.
On top of
and
that,
here
Rita,
it is.
the number of people who will tell me privately when they're done recording that when they're in the hospital, they have family members sneak in their insulin and stuff like that, and they take care of themselves and won't even tell the hospital because the hospital wants to run you like a type 2 on their protocol. I'll test you again in 6 hours, which is insane. And by the way, too, healing and overall health is optimized with in-range blood sugars. You can't
exactly.
You can't heal with a 300 blood sugar. It doesn't work that way. So
no, and I was fortunate enough that during one of my hospital visits, the endocrinologist on call was actually my endocrinologist. So he knew, he saw my numbers, and they can look at the chart now, and he knows. And he said to them, have her put everything back on. She's going to tell you how many carbs she eats. Don't worry about the insulin. She's taking care of it all herself.
Yeah.
And that was so much better. And even now, I've had a few surgeries since, subsequently after, the story I told you, I've had a number of surgeries. And even then into surgery now, most anesthesiologists say just leave everything on and I just reinforce it. You better be checking my blood sugars during surgery, which I know they do, but they just sort of want to see how it works. No, leave everything on. Because I think for them, it's actually maybe easier. I don't know, but they're fine. They're fine.
It would be a damn shame that if vagina cancer and melanomas in different places and lymph nodes and everything, that doesn't kill you, but you're going to get taken down by a nurse that let you go 6 hours.
That is not going to happen.
Yeah, Rita's I'm not going out like that.
No, that's not the way I'm going to go.
Yeah, because I imagine your last conscious thought would be, son of a bitch.
Yeah, like in my head, like you're saying, be nice. And I am nice. But in my head, I always think, you don't know what you're talking. I can do this. It's like, I know what. Just leave it all in place and it's good. And just go look at my charts and you'll see where my blood sugars are at. And,
I spoke to a nurse recently who had such a good, I thought, way about this. She said, with people with diabetes, we see people who are completely just mismanaged. They don't know what they're doing. And then it's hard to believe anybody knows what they're doing. But the way we handle it is we start off by saying, all right, it's on you, but if you drop the ball, then we're going to take over. And I think that's a reasonable way to do it.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And they don't know us, right? I mean, they see so many patients and, I know myself, but they don't know me. And that's understandable. And so, but I like that approach of let's look at, you can deal with it. Let's watch what you do for the, next little bit. But if it doesn't work, we're taking over. And that's fair because not everybody manages their diabetes well, I guess,
or safely for the situation.
Or safely. Yeah.
Well, Rita, this was terrific. Please thank your husband for finding the podcast for me. And I appreciate very much that you came on and shared this story. It's absolutely insane. It really is.
Yeah. Right.
Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Of course. No, it's a pleasure.
It was fun.
A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. I'd also like to thank Rita for sharing her story, and of course, the Contour Next One blood glucose meter for sponsoring this episode. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Get a great meter. Get the Contour Next One. If you're looking for a way to give back to the Juicebox podcast, look no farther than telling someone else about it. Helping the podcast to grow in listenership is helping the podcast. Show people where to listen in an app, online. Tell them what it's done for you. Tell them what you've learned from it, what you love about it. Just share it. That's all I am asking. That's it. It's a short ask. That's it. Share the show. I mean, listen, if you love it and you're like crazy love it, then go to the app you listen in and leave a beautiful rating and a review, like 5 stars and a what's the word I'm looking for? A complete description of why you like the podcast. That also helps the show just the same. Well, it's not, sharing it's better. If I'm being honest, if you can only do one thing, share the show with somebody else. That's the biggest deal. Also, don't miss the private Facebook group. It's terrific. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes, absolutely free. 30,000 people in it. Head over there now. People just like you, using insulin, looking for help, looking for support, or giving it. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.